My name is Dana Connors. I'm the president of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. It is my pleasure to welcome you back to the Maine Take. As you have come to know, it's all about information. It may be about politics, it may be about the person, or it may be about policy. Well, our guest today is about all three of those, and we are greatly pleasured to have Congresswoman Chellie Pingree with us today. And for those who know her, know that she's a hardworking representative, very determined in what she does, that she strongly believes in, and it is our pleasure to have you with us today. We know it's a very busy time, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Nice to see you.
Well, same here. So I want to get into the issues, but I have to confess, I would love to explore a little bit about you before we do that, because there's a real career of public service that precedes you that I'd like to spend just a moment or two. I think the public should know it. But first of all, Minneapolis girl, born there, came to Bar Harbor College of the Atlantic. How did that happen?
Well, I actually ended up doing I was sort of doing a last year of high school in Massachusetts. And like so many people, I met a boy and he was coming from Maine, and I decided to follow him here. And that's how I ended up on the island of North Haven. His family owned some property here. And he ended up going to the vocational school for boat building, and I ended up going to College of the Atlantic, and
the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah. Speaking of history, I also want to share with our viewing audience that you have a very distinguished career of public service. Obviously on the island of North Haven, but I remember you best when you were in the legislature and served your full 8 terms, 4 terms, 8 years. And you probably may not remember this, but Angus King and I do. He was elected in 1994. I was his transition director. And he said to me, I asked him, is there a commissioner that you really want me to try to make sure that is a part of your cabinet? And he said, yeah, Chellie Pingree. So he said, I'd like to have you go out and try to convince her. Well, I did go out and I did try to convince, but the answer was a very polite no. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but the department was the Department of Economic and Community Development. And you were very strong in that area and very well respected. So he said, oh, Dana, I can't believe you weren't able to do that. Let me try. Well, he came up with the same answer. But now we know in part what that reason was, because a couple years later, you became majority leader in the Maine Senate. And there were a lot of things in terms of policy that you developed that you moved on. And since 2008, after a term with Common Cause, you have been our representative in the 1st District. That's a long spell when you have to run almost every year, even though it's a 2-year term. That's very commendable. We congratulate.
Well, I do want you to know, I just want to say that was an incredibly exciting offer. That would have been a great job. It honestly was my dream job. But I was very attached to living in the community of North Haven. I didn't want to uproot my kids. And I really liked the balance of being in the legislature, but being able to be back in my hometown as well. But, you know, to this day, I still kind of wonder, like, wow, I would have gotten to do so many interesting things. But I've gotten to do some great stuff anyway. You
certainly did. You took the words right out of my mouth. I want to begin, and frankly, I asked the same question of Senator King, but I want to put it before you as well. When you think of 2020, it is so unprecedented in the challenges that we faced. For Maine, we faced the challenges of a pandemic that we're still dealing with. It affected our economic health, our public health, our mental health, and there was strong leadership that moved us forward. But nevertheless, we dealt with it, and we still are. But we also had shortly after that, during the year, we came face to face with the issue of racial inequality, the Black Lives Matter movement. We had an election that probably I've not seen anything like it in my experience, followed by a siege on our capital. And then within a year and a month, we had a second impeachment of the same president. That's an incredible year. You lived right in the middle of all of that. Reflect on that.
Well, it's been a great privilege to be a participant in the democracy at the most challenging time, most people have experienced in their lifetime and in our country has experienced in a very, very long time. But it has been hugely painful for our country. The loss of lives is truly unprecedented. And I think, we've just hit the 500,000 loss of life. And that's just hard for us even to wrap our heads around. I mean, most of this past year, the kinds of change we've witnessed, the upheaval, it really has been like nothing we've ever seen before. I am a great believer that, through adversity comes, enlightenment and strength. And sometimes you get down to the bare bones and figure out, what's important and what do you have to work out. And for all of the hardship that people have experienced and are still truly experiencing, I think it has forced us to look at some of the core things. It's been the biggest civics lesson that America could ever have. I don't think people really, ever thought about all these things about the balance of power and the role of democracy and how elections were. There's just so many things, and in many ways, our country's so much more knowledgeable about that, about science, data. We've gotten so far from appreciating science and information, and I like to think that when we get to the other side, we'll really, say that there's a role for science. And, if people say something bad is going to happen, you got to start preparing. And, public health and research and, the NIH, all these things that sort of had been allowed to flounder to a certain extent. But just the very idea that, we kind of have to get back to an understanding of truth and, what it means to work together. And, we just can't talk about this in sort of flowery terms. This is all for real. And we've gotten very close to, almost kind of like, in a sense, losing our democracy or losing our ability to combat a disease. So it's been a big year. There's no question about it.
And you said it well. I mean, what you said, I think, establishes the context of what we've been dealing with. And that is, it's kind of like putting us on pause and kind of redesigning ourselves, reestablishing ourselves, almost going back to those fundamental principles that we probably have taken for granted, let it slip. So as you mentioned, out of adversity sometimes come some real good things, and we hope that's the case here. So very thoughtful, appreciate that. Well, new president, new control, new initiatives. You've always been a leader, as I've seen it, in areas like agriculture. You've been involved in the interior and environment, and a number of issues. In fact, when I looked up the number of caucuses, I couldn't believe how many caucuses that you were part of. But anyway, tell us about your new role. I suspect that because of your passion for those areas that you've been on appropriations. These were subcommittees of appropriations, and appropriations is something that I'm sure every congressperson wants to be on because of its power and its influence. But tell me, what are your new roles? Are you retaining some of the same?
I mean, it's an exciting year for me. I'm the subcommittee chair on Interior and the Environment, and I still continue to serve on the Agriculture Appropriations Committee and the Military Construction and VA Subcommittee. Appropriations at the federal level is different than how we do it in Maine. It's all conducted through the subcommittees. So it gives you a lot of, it really does give you a lot more power, a lot more ability to set the agenda. And for me in particular, having a new administration with such a big agenda before us, particularly around climate change and the environment, means that my committee will get to deal with a lot of important issues. Also, because the previous administration had a very different agenda, we lost so many senior employees at the EPA, for instance, or the Department of Interior. Those budgets were largely underfunded, and they're very important here in Maine, whether it's the national park or certainly the EPA and the role it plays in Maine's environment. So there's a lot of work to be done, but it's a really exciting time. It's a small subcommittee. It's very bipartisan because for the most part, a lot of the issues we agree on. Of course, there are some differences around climate change and some of my colleagues, but a lot of them come from the West Coast and they've dealt with huge issues around forest fires. We have the Department of Forestry in there as well. So there's a lot we work on together. We have all tribal resources. So many of them are representing much larger tribes than we have here in Maine, but all of them are dealing with, health challenges, COVID challenges, education. So it's a really interesting time. And also because I've served on agriculture for quite a while and I've done a lot of work around the convergence between agriculture and climate change. And Maine has had such an amazing resurgence in our agriculture sector in the last decade or two. It's also a really exciting time because I think a lot of the things that we'll be able to work on with our new Secretary of Ag will be very helpful to the state of Maine and to our emerging, growth in agriculture. And one thing we've really seen during the pandemic is a huge interest in people buying food locally again. Even though we lost a lot in the tourism sector and our restaurants, some of it has been made up for just people saying like, well, is there a farmer down the road? Can I buy locally? And so I think we're going to do a lot to encourage that.
Well, I agree with that statement. I also, when I think about those three subcommittees of agriculture, interior environment, and then military construction and veterans, boy, if that doesn't strike to the state of Maine, I don't know how you would ever do that. I mean, it seems to me to be so important in every aspect. That's
It's been great. It really has. And I didn't mention military construction, but that's where a lot of frankly, all of the funding for the Kittery shipyard. So there's been a lot of modernization work there to upgrade their work on submarines. And so that's been critically important, particularly in helping to make sure we never face a BRAC again down there, the potential closing.
Exactly.
And then with the VA, Maine has a very high percentage of veterans and active duty military personnel. So that's an important issue as well. It's really been a great combination of subcommittees. And I mentioned just briefly forestry, but there's a lot of interest in revitalization in our forest products industry, and Maine has really been a leader. We have that joint agreement with Finland, and there's been so much work done on trying to look at new resources or new industries, cross-laminate timber and wood fiber-based insulation, and just a lot of stuff happening in Maine. And I'm really excited to bring some of those examples to our committee to commit more research and development funding and, innovation funding, because I think Maine's, surprised itself at how much we've been able to do, really thinking ahead.
Oh, it's true. And when you think about it, I mean, fishing, farming, and forestry has been the foundation of our economy for decades, centuries almost, when you think about it. And the fact of the matter remains, it is still important today. It's just innovation has brought them, those who survived, to do the same thing, but in different ways, different applications. So that's good. Another area that is extremely important to Maine and is one that you are also involved in, as I understand it. We have a webinar, 4-part series webinar starting tomorrow, in which we speak to the federal role within this area, and that's broadband. And as I understand it, you're on a bipartisan coalition that's dealing with that, particularly as it relates to the rural, which clearly is Maine.
Absolutely. And you're right. That's a really wonderful bipartisan issue because, many of my Republican colleagues represent very rural districts, which, we are one of the more rural states. And they're suffering from the same issue, whether it's a heavily agriculture state or it's a state where, people want to bring their business to rural communities, as we're seeing more and more of, or certainly during the pandemic, people working from home in the education sector. It's just critical to a new economy. It's as critical as, developing the electric lines was in a different era. The Department of Agriculture through the Rural Development and the USDA has a lot of the funding for rural broadband. So that's one of the reasons I've focused on it a lot, but also in the pandemic packages that we've worked on over the past year, broadband has been a big interest of everybody because there really isn't a part of the country. Maine is particularly hard hit because we have so many communities that are, a long way off the 95 corridor. And we have some of the slowest speeds in the country. And we've increasingly learned, you can't, it's one thing to be connected, but if you don't have enough speed, you can't do your work, your kids can't do their schoolwork, your business can't run as efficiently. It's a big, big issue.
Well, and at the same time, it's pretty clear that the pandemic for us has brought this issue front and center. And whether you're looking at your healthcare needs, your educational needs, your economic needs, the people that are coming to Maine, we want to keep them in Maine. They'll be working remotely to a large degree. Yeah, yep. It's so critical. It's an important position. I have used up a lot of your time, but I don't want to let you go just yet. Give us the latest. We understand that as far as the House goes, you're looking forward to a vote this week on the latest CARES package of nearly $2 trillion. What's your take on that?
Well, we're going to have a vote probably by the end of this week, and we're down to the final stages of the package. And because of this convoluted process called budget reconciliation, it is very likely that it will move through. It only takes a majority vote. We'll go to the Senate and they'll do some tweaking to it. But our goal is to have it done by the middle of March. That's when the current round of unemployment insurance runs out. We don't want people to have a big gap, yet again, given it's a tough time. So I think this one will move through. And importantly, it has a lot of the same kinds of funding that we had in previous packages, the PPP for small businesses, aid to school, trying to get more of the vaccine out more quickly, develop more vaccines and have more products, a whole variety of things that, like I said, we've had before. But one that's most important to me is funding for state and local governments. That has not gotten into any of the more recent packages. And Maine, like every other state, is dealing with these revenue shortfalls. And this one goes into distribution all the way down to the community level. So those communities that have had to, do extra to outfit their town offices for, COVID-related things, or have extra costs because they're first responders, this package will get some money out to them as well as the state. And I hope that really helps to stabilize the economy. And, for the state that has to fund education and healthcare, this is very much needed money.
Yeah, even surprising to me is the fact that it hasn't received a higher priority in previous packages for the very reasons that you set forth. I must say, when I asked you to come on, I told your staff, I'll only take 15 minutes. You've been gracious to give me 20 minutes. And I am very thankful for that. And you've been very informative, as you always are. And we appreciate you being with us today, and keep up the good work.
Well, you too, Dana. You do a great job, and it's always a pleasure to see you, even if it's virtually.
That's right. I look better virtually. Well, I'm not sure that's very good either. So anyway, good luck. Take care.
Take care. Nice to see you.
Same here. So now we turn our attention to what we call the week ahead, talking about those policies within the state legislature that even in our early stages, and admittedly they are, process becomes an issue as much as the policy questions themselves. This week, I've asked our general counsel and the president of our education foundation, who happens to be also the one that looks at the committees of energy, environment, and education, to give us a quick update on a webinar we just talked about, namely the broadband issues, a 4-part series. And Ben, why don't you share with our audience exactly what that entails and what your plans are?
Sure, thanks, Dana. And as you know, and I'm sure everyone watching know, one of the hottest topics this legislative session is the expansion of broadband in Maine. Whether it be in the Making Maine work document we released, the governor's 10-year strategic plan to grow the economy, or the Economic Recovery Committee, all of them reference the need for us to expand broadband. And knowing that based on bill titles as well, that we have a number of bond bills, but also looking at legislation of how we best expand broadband, we thought now is a perfect time to bring to the business community in Maine a broadband webinar series. So we dubbed it Bringing Maine Up to Speed, or ME Up to Speed. And it's going to be a 4-part series. It's going to begin tomorrow. But we thought to really understand broadband and the expansion in Maine, we really need to know what's going on at the federal level. So the one tomorrow, which is going to be launched at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, is kind of going to look at the federal programs, the money that's available at the federal level. And I think in a unique way, not only do we have the head of the U.S. Chamber Technology Council to give us a federal update, we also have the United States Department of Agriculture, who administers rural development programs for broadband expansion, on also to explain exactly what those programs are and what they're available for rural Maine. In addition to that, we'll have the Commissioner of DECD on to talk about the value of those federal programs. And then finally, we'll round out that panel with one of the ISP providers in Maine who uses and implements those federal programs, Consolidated Communications. I think it's going to be a well-rounded program, and it's going to kick off a series which then we can dig a little bit deeper into federal funding and then move on to the state issues in the last two parts of the webinar. So I think it's very timely. There's a lot of discussion around broadband, but to get our handle on what's going on at the federal level, I think will help us better address the issue at the state level. And that's the idea behind the whole series. And we have partnered up on this one with Mission Broadband. Our friends there, Mike Reed, who used to be at Fairpoint Communications and now is with Mission Broadband, is one of our key partners in this programming, and we're happy to partner with them on it.
Great, thanks, Ben. And not only is it timely, as we said in our previous section, it's one that is so vital to our state and our people, whether it's healthcare, education, or the economy. It fits every single one of those areas. So we look forward to it. And thanks for being with us and updating our viewers.
Thank you, Dana.
Next, I'd like to welcome to our state and congratulate him, a person by the name of Matt Lewis, soon to be our latest resident. Matt comes to us from Upper California, the San Francisco area, I believe. Recently appointed as president and CEO of HospitalityMaine. Those of us in Maine know HospitalityMaine to be a blending of both the lodging and the restaurant industry. Matt, congratulations, welcome, and I so look forward to working with you in the months ahead, or years maybe I should say.
Thank you, Dana. Nice to be with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, the pleasure is ours. Tell us, I mentioned just briefly that you bring with you tremendous experience and expertise in the hospitality industry. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I have a long hotel and convention, what we called Convention and Visitors Bureau background. I like being involved in being in a front-facing position where I'm working with people to bring people to either a destination or a hotel, and that's largely been my background, Dana. And I saw this opportunity in Maine, and I threw my hat into the ring for it, and the rest is history. But I'm very pleased to be here. I have a long history in hotels and tourism, and have worked in that sort of sales marketing arena for a long part of my career. Yeah,
and we're very grateful that you bring that experience and expertise with us. As you know, certainly the hospitality tourism industry in our state is a major player. They say it's around 7 billion. I would say by the time you look at your suppliers and those who contribute in a number of ways, is closer to 10 billion. Whatever it is, it's extremely important. Tell me a bit about what attracted you. I say that in a positive sense. I'm not saying like, why'd you come to Maine? I'm saying it like, we're glad you came to Maine. We know what we like about Maine. What did you see that appealed to you, either in this position or what you found out about Maine?
Well, it was interesting, Dana, because I don't have a long history in Maine. I'm new to Maine, and every day I'm learning more about the state and the people. I don't have a long family history here. I've been to the state a few times on leisure travel. And then when the position opened, I was great. After a few interviews, was graciously invited to Maine around Christmas time. And it was absolutely beautiful. But my recollection was that the hotels and restaurants are just a really welcoming. There's something very special with Maine hospitality. And I can't quite put my finger on it yet, but that is a big reason why I chose to take this job. It's very special. There are some, but there aren't a lot of brand hotels here. There's a few, but that independent hotel feeling is really important here. And, it allows for sort of a special and unusual atmosphere when you check into a hotel. It's kind of different, and that was absolutely one of the reasons why I chose coming here. But certainly the welcome while I was interviewing and since I've been here has been fantastic, Dana, and it's been very nice.
Well, thanks. And we hope that that welcoming attitude persists. That's how we see ourselves, and we hope others see us in that same way. Let me ask you this, and I plan to have you back a number of times, so I won't keep you a long time today, but I wanted to ask you, I know you've made it a point in the short time you've been here, a little over a week, I think, or 2 weeks at the most, that you spent a lot of time meeting board members and members of the hospitality sector. I'm sure they talked about the tough year that 2020 was, the impact it had on them, and we're hoping that is in the rearview mirror, not before us. But what are you hearing from board members or people in the hospitality industry so far?
Well, I mean, I certainly come from a state, every state was ravaged by COVID. And I come from California, where recovery is still they're still in recovery mode, and it's probably years before they can get back on their feet. So I certainly am aware of some of the challenges that Maine faced. Obviously, having not been here last year, I'm hearing secondhand of how it all, was in 2020. But what I pledged to the board when I interviewed was that I would be a director of the organization and a president that would be out and about, active with our board, active with our members, active with the community. And that is what I will continue to do. So that's just not something that's going to happen for 2 weeks. That's going to be how I see myself in this position. So, but what I'm hearing from hotels are certainly, I want to hear positive. I want to hear positive signs, and that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that in the South, in York and Algonquin, there are glimmers of hope. They're seeing some good bookings, and they're feeling confident, somewhat confident for the summer. But then, I hear in Portland there is concern. There is concern about the summer, and that they're not quite ready to celebrate yet, or even, we have to give it some time to see what summer is going to look like. But what I think there is a general feeling that we're all working toward moving forward and trying to get out of this. Will there be stumbles along the way? Yes. Could COVID come back and take us a different direction? Yes. But certainly HospitalityMaine, and I know the Maine Tourism Association and other organizations, the state, are working toward crafting marketing plans to bring people back to Maine when they're ready. And that's different for different people, as you know. Not everyone's ready to get in the car or the plane or the train. Some people are, but we need to be ready for when it's time to welcome those people back.
Matt Lewis, I wish we had so much more time, because you are a very interesting guest, and we so appreciate having you here with us, both what you have planning to do, but also your attitude in terms of getting the job done. I think that matters a lot. And we do plan to have you back a lot, and we do look forward to working with you. Your sector is important to us, and tourism is a major engine for our economy. So the days ahead, we hope to be as positive as it can possibly be, and we hope to be a part of that with you. So thank you again.
See you again soon, Dana. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's the major part of our program once again for the Maine Take. I'll leave you with these thoughts as I ponder what I'm about to say in terms of wrapping up this particular program for this particular Monday. Find the good and praise it. Those are the words expressed by Alex Haley, the author of that very popular book called Roots. Those were his words that he left with people when they asked him to review and consider the book he had just written. Well, I think we all know that finding the good and praising it is fundamentally important to everything and anything that we do, from our personal lives to the economy. But I would confess that in the year we've just had, dealing with the issues at the Capitol, but most notably for us, the pandemic, that's easier said than done. But it is important to do. And as I thought, as this show was coming to a close and I was thinking about those who participated today, I would offer you this to think about to keep with the message that actually Alex Haley submitted for our consideration. When you think of the pandemic, yes, from economic health to public health to mental health, it has been a challenge. But you know what? There's an awful lot of people that we're finding coming to our state to buy homes, to establish residence. As a matter of fact, Atlas Moving rated us as the third highest for inbound movement by people coming to our state. Nobody's forcing them to do that. They're doing it because of what they see, what Matt just referenced, a quality of life. This is a safe place. This is a caring place. As Senator King often reminds us, Maine is a big state, but it's a small community. Matt Lewis left us with something to consider as well. He came here because he saw and believed in what he saw. He saw a hospitality industry that was both important, meaningful, and he was eager to help. While he hadn't been here a lot, he nevertheless was witness to a very basic fabric of Maine people. Again, it's quality of life. I often use this as a brand when people ask me about Maine. I tell them it's about quality. Quality of our people, quality of our products, and quality of our place. That's something that's good that we should be praising for sure. But I'm not going to stop there because I think today, based upon the previous two interviews with Senators Collins and King, and today with Congresswoman Pingree, and I know it to be true with Representative Jared Golden that we'll be interviewing next week at this very time. I can say this without even having the interview with him because I know him well enough to be able to say this. We have something to be grateful for in our delegation as well. Yes, I know things are more divisive than not in DC. I also know we just come through an election, the national and the state level, that was what we didn't expect or really didn't desire in terms of the divisiveness. But for the moment, let's put that aside. Let's also put aside the party politics that goes with our lives today. And also put aside the labels that put people either as a liberal or as a conservative. And let's think about our delegation in terms of their character, their commitment. They are, all four of them, people who care, who are committed, who work hard on our behalf, who are respected. And when you see their names in the media, it's about what they're trying to do to improve the lives of Maine people. When you see their names in print, it's to communicate what they're working on our behalf. It's not about what they haven't done. It's not about anything ethical or of that nature. No, they are hard at work. And if you were Rotarian, you would use their model and describe them as service above self. I believe that to be true. But they also follow in some pretty big footsteps who carried on in that same tradition during their time. Margaret Chase Smith, Bill Cohen, Ed Muskie, George Mitchell, Olympia Snow. When we think of our representation in Washington, yeah, it's good. And we can be grateful. They serve us well. Yes, today it gave us thought that while you may have your own things to feel good about, we encourage you as well as the rest of us to think about those because they really do make a difference. And not just think about them, say them out loud, praise them, let them know that you appreciate. I think we need to do that because I really believe it makes a difference. That is the takeaway for today. That is the program. I thank our sponsors, I thank our guests, and I thank you for tuning in every Monday at 3 o'clock. As we complete today's program and look forward to next week, let me leave you with this. Take care of yourself, but don't forget to take care of others as well. Thank you.